Hello and welcome to this event for the Montgomery College 2020 Humanities Days. My name is Angela Lanier and I'll be one of the facilitators for today. Our session today, Why I Vote, will be led by Ms. Lauren Kingland. Lauren Kingland is a master quilter, a teacher who's taught in both online and in-person formats. Her mission is to break the barriers of tradition so that quilts are recognized as an art medium and as tools for self-knowledge and self-healing. Combining traditional and modern techniques, her work incorporates today's stories, including her peaceful kolam quilts series inspired by contemplative drawings in South India. Lauren creates unique artwork for her clients from their collections of treasured garments. She is a visiting artist with the Georgetown Lombardi Arts and Humanities program, and she teaches for the Smithsonian Studio Arts program. Lauren lives and works in historic Washington Grove, Maryland. So let's please welcome her and enjoy the presentation. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Good morning, Angela. Thank you for that nice introduction. I would like to give special thanks to Dr. Sarah Ducey and to Angela for this invitation to be part of Humanities Week here at Montgomery College. How exciting to have a whole week of looking at important issues together online. It's great. And I want to also thank Rustin for her assistance in mailing out all these, a round of applause for for mailing out your
Thank you.
Kit. Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you. I appreciate you. I have a little question, please. If you would put in the chat where you are, so it'd be really interesting to find out the geographical distribution of the people who are visiting us today. Thank you. I'm going to share quickly a picture of, share that. All right. So here is a picture of the quilt that was the idea behind this workshop. When Sarah and Angela approached me about doing a workshop for Humanities Week, they said, "What you got going on that would be interesting?" And I had just finished this quilt, which is currently hanging in an exhibit that's on display at the City of Gaithersburg Activity Center there at Borough Park. And it's an exhibit sponsored by the Women's Caucus for Art DC chapter. They issued a call to artists asking for pieces to be submitted for the show about why I vote. Well, mine is very literally why I vote. And let me just quickly read to you a little bit about what the purpose of that show. They said, "The blood, sweat, and tears of many courageous women led to the ratification August 18th, 1920, officially granting women the right to vote. In celebration of this momentous accomplishment, the city, in collaboration with the Women's Caucus for Art DC, presents Why I Vote, an art exhibit at the Activity Center from September 11th until November 16th. So if you happen to be in Gaithersburg, Maryland, with your mask, prepared to be appropriately socially distanced, you can go and see that exhibit. Angela will also put in the chat the website for the City of Gaithersburg so you can see more about it. And there is a virtual art show there. If you can't go and see the exhibit in person, you can see the virtual slideshow of the exhibit. So my quilt features 5-pointed stars and striped sections that are inspired by, so it was inspired by the flag. I'm not copying the flag, which is, an inappropriate thing to do, but I'm inspired by the flag here. And I wrote on this the reasons why I vote. And then I used these stars. And then the border of this quilt is a quotation from John Lewis. John Lewis's final letter to the New York Times, July 30th, 2020. I was in the process of finishing this quilt, and there was such a lot of conversation about voting and the importance of voting. So these quotes I printed onto fabric with my laser printer, and I cut it into strips and sewed them around. So this is the border context in which my stars and my own words are surrounded. So I will not read that to you, but you can read that yourself. I'm going to stop sharing. Here we go. Oops. Forgive me, folks. There we go. Okay, we're back. We're back. So as I said, my quilt features. Angela, would you spotlight my hand, please?
I'm sorry, which one?
The demo, please.
Okay, there we go.
Okay.
Whoops.
Great.
There we go.
So here's a little sample example of what we're going to make. Okay, great. So this is the idea that we're going to be coming up with today. We're going to talk about how to write on fabric. We're going to talk about how to make this star, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that. And then I'm going to show you how to sew pieces together. Some of you are experienced quilters, so bear with me. I see several familiar names, and I know you know how to sew a seam, but it'll be fun. It'll be fun. I'm going to start with the writing part, because then we can do that, and you'll have that piece all done, so when we start sewing, you don't have to stop and write. If you have a kit from me, you will have some pieces of white fabric that have paper on the back of them. That's ordinary freezer paper from the aluminum foil plastic bag section of the grocery store. It has a plastic film on one side, so you can cut that into squares and iron that onto the back of your fabric. That way the fabric doesn't scoot around. If you try to write on unbacked paper, just on unbacked fabric, plain fabric, it's very hard to get a nice line. So that's why you have these. I have in your kit, you will have a Sarasa pen. It won't look like this because Sarasa has changed to a reusable, refillable pen rather than having lots of disposable pens, which is great, but it's the same ink, and it's a gel ink. It doesn't smear, and I love it because when I iron this, it becomes permanent. So that's an important consideration for doing things on fabric, and yet it's nice to write with. When I did my own quilt, here's a bit that was a piece of it that didn't get into the finished product, but I used a fabric marker and I wrote on fabric sheets that are used for inkjet printing. I make labels and things for the backs of quilts with this material, and I end up with trimmed off bits that I can't throw away because I'm very thrifty. So I have trimmed off bits. So these were also paper backed fabrics that were easy to write on. So today we have freezer paper, and I want to encourage you to use either scrap paper or the paper side of this to practice what you want to say on the front of your quilt. When you're writing on a quilt, the most important thing to keep in mind is that there will be a seam allowance around the outside edge. So leave like a thumb width, all the way around, right in the middle. Own the middle of the page, own the middle of the fabric. Have you ever noticed you're writing on like a group birthday card, and nobody will just sign it right in the middle? Everybody writes around the edges. But I encourage you to write in the middle. So let's practice on your scrap paper or on the paper that's on the back of this what you want to say, just kind of the layout. I'm going to write on this one, yo voto, those little stickers that I'm not going to get this year because I've already voted by mail, but the little stickers that they used to passed out at the polls that you can wear after you voted all day, and that has kind of an oval around it. All right, well, that needs a little bit of work, but that's the reason for doing doing a sketch. Like, okay, let me try another sketch. Okay, but maybe I'll start with the oval. There's the oval. Okay, and you can write I voted. I just whatever or whatever you have to say. So I'm going to go back to my slideshow because I have some
Lauren,
prompts.
while you're doing that, a couple of questions were posted in the chat.
Yes.
One just asked, can you do this with fusible material?
Yes, you can.
Okay. And the other was, someone asked, how do you print on the laser printer? How do you print fabric on the laser
Excuse me, it's
printer?
an inkjet. I use an inkjet.
Inkjet. Okay.
The fabric the fabric for that comes in 8.5 by 11 sheets with a paper backing on it. So you can use the word processing program on your computer to say whatever it is you want to say. And then instead of printing on paper, you put a sheet of this inkjet printer fabric into your printer, cloth side down, and it goes through, and it just prints right on the cloth side, and then you peel the paper off and sew it into your project. Okay.
And can you tell the name or the brand of the paper?
There's a brand called Printed Treasures, which is very popular. A lot of people like it, and that's available at quilt shops. I happened to pick up this June Taylor Sew-In Color Fast inkjet printer sheets at Joann's when I was there one time, and I really like it. It's easy to get the paper off. It takes a nice image. So there are a number of different kinds of products, but it's fabric sheets for inkjet printers. Any other questions? Okay, back to our cloth. I'm just gonna make my oval. I'm not going to get too wrapped around the axle here about perfection because I want to see the evidence of my hand while I'm doing that. So while you're writing, please think about let me share this. Okay, did I share that? There we go. Think about when and when did you first vote? Do you remember the first time you voted? Have you experienced obstacles to voting? Maybe what is your vivid voting memory? Any of these prompts can help you think about what to write. Why does your vote matter? So, while you're working, just ponder those things. My last prompt is really not necessarily something about what you will draw or write on your quilt block today, but it's a question that I'd just like to drop into the room for you to think about, which is, how can we move past the oppositional stance of winning and losing, that zero-sum game in which if I win, you have to lose. That's not a place to live peaceably together as a democracy. Democracy works because of cooperation. So we have to move a little bit to one side and look at an election as not winners and losers, because we're not winners and losers, we're citizens. And there are different ideas floating around about how to be together as citizens. But if we just live in opposition, there's no place to go. And there's too much worthy work to do to live in that place of opposition. So just ponder that. And one way we can do that is to cooperate and vote and make beautiful quilts. All right, so here's my I'm going to stop that share. Okay, so we're back. All right. Any messages in the chat that I should see about any further questions about the writing?
No, you answered. Oh, wait, one more.
One about the name of the laser printer product. Maybe you could key that in later for us. Okay. Oh, here we go.
Yeah.
This particular, just to remind everybody, there are multiple brands of these things, right, and this is just one that she happens to have that works.
This is well. The one that I happen to have that is.
And the brand on this one was?
It's June Taylor.
June Taylor.
Right. And it's one of the advantages of this is that it is a mass market brand, so you can get it. You can get it in places like Michael's and Joann's. Some of the others are available at quilt shops, and I encourage you to support your local quilt shops. They're available online. This is just coincidentally one of them that I have. Okay, so I've got my written. Are we looking at my hand at the demo? Are you looking at the demo? Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So I've got my written piece that's available for this time. So I'm going to set that aside. Now, history is made up of our stories, the stories that we tell one another about how, about the past, how we got to be where we are today. And one of the stories from American history that has always intrigued me is the story of Betsy Ross and the American flag, and why we have 5 pointed stars in the American flag. Betsy Ross was a seamstress from Philadelphia who was commissioned to make that iconic flag with the red and white stripes and the blue field in the corner that had a circle of 13 5-pointed stars on it. So we, I had heard the story that when she was commissioned to do that, the drawing that she was brought to create the flag had 6-pointed stars, and she said, "Oh no, 5-pointed stars are much more interesting. They're much more beautiful." So, and the people who were commissioning the flag, some say it was General Washington, but he wasn't in Philadelphia at that point, so who knows? Anyway, that's the history. She said, no, we can do it efficiently. And she took a piece of cloth and she folded it up, and took her scissors not. But wait. And with one snip, she had made ta-da! A 5-pointed star. Isn't that the trickiest thing ever?
I love that. I love that.
Yeah, I do too. It is so cool. It is so cool. So,
can you show that how to fold that paper again, please?
That's what we're doing. That is our next task.
Okay.
If you got the kit, my face, please. Oh, I'll put it down here. If you got the kit, you will have gotten this handout with 2 clocks on it. If you have some mathematical, if you think back to your school math class, you'll know that a circle has 360 degrees in it. And our 5-pointed star, needs to have 10 kind of wedges, because we have a line of symmetry here. We have the right hand and the left hand of this angle. So we need to divide the 360 degrees into 10 pieces to get a 5-pointed star. If that doesn't make sense, just trust me. And so I have a protractor. You know, you can use a protractor. That works great. I am going to go out on a limb and assume that not everybody has a protractor in their desk drawer right close to hand. And so I was trying to think, how are we going to figure this out? How am I going to explain how much 36 degrees is? Because you have to have 36 degrees. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the circle of a clock face. In this clock that you see right here, we have a line from the center up to 12 o'clock, all right? And we have 5, 10, 15 marks there. And 6 minutes is 36 degrees. So I want to draw a line from the center, use this, to just kind of eyeball. Here's 5, here's 10, 7.5 is in the middle, so 6 is just a little bit to the left of that. The clip art that I used has a hand that's going to like 8 minutes after the hour. You want to be like halfway between the end of that long hand and the mark for the 5. And that would be about 36 degrees. Okay? Clear as mud. Okay, hopefully. So I'm going to cut out this red circle. Don't worry, your handout has been designed so that if you cut out the circle, you will not have cut out the instructions on the back. Okay, I thought about that. So I'm going to fold this in half. So folding it in half from 12 to 6. Got that? Here's my 36 degree, my 36 degree arc at 6 minutes. I'm going to take this end where the 6 o'clock is and put my finger right there in the middle so that we're pivoting on the center. And I'm going to fold that so that that arc is even with my drawn line. Okay, so up like that. And I'm going to fold that in half again, getting a nice point at the center, once again from the center, so that that second fold is on that 6 minute line. And then I'm going to turn the whole thing over and fold the 6 minute section back. So I have ended up with a 36 degree wedge. And if you count, there are 10 layers of paper in that. Isn't that tricky? Our next task is to make a cut in this. I'm going to start now fairly low on one side. And I'm going to draw a line up to where the red of the arc is. This angle can vary, and if it's a steep angle, you'll get a star that has a lot of point, a steep point. If you have a flat angle, you'll get a star that's kind of squatty. So that's just a matter of personal preference. All right, here we go. I'm going to cut on my line. And the big reveal. Oh, I think we got it. Ta-da!
And Lauren,
But
there's a request if you could do it another time when you're.
I will.
at that point. Okay,
I will do it again. I will do it again because this is the tricky thing. This is why you signed up, so you would learn something you didn't know. So there's the 5-pointed star, and
So cool. So very cool.
it is so cool. I know it is so cool. And the bonus is that when you do that, you also get a 5-pointed star-shaped hole. Now, for those of us who are making a quilt, that means that we get, find 2 of them that are supposed to go, here we go. Okay, we get a star out of the fabric, and we can put that on one background. And then we get a star-shaped hole, which we can put onto another piece of fabric. So we get 2 blocks with only one, by making only one star. Let me do it again. Okay, this time I'm going to use the protractor. So in case you don't have the circle, and I'll do it as many times as you need, but with the protractor, I'm folding it in half. I'm putting the center of the protractor, lining the base of it up with that fold, and here's 36. Okay. I'm going to draw that line. Fold the lower edge up so it's even with that line. Fold it in half again. Fold that original little bit to the back. I'm going to pay attention to where the top edge of this comes, because I don't want to cut through the edge of my star-shaped hole. So that's where I'm going to end up. And I'm going to start down here. All right. Are you ready? Going to cut along with me? Did we get it? Did we get it?
I think Sarah has it. Denise has hers, is showing hers. Nice job, Denise.
Yeah. I'm
There are others. Forgive me, Chandini. Chandini. I'm not sure if I'm saying your name correct, but she has
Yes.
it up. Nice job.
Sandra, looks nice. Looks nice. Yay!
Celia, yours looks nice.
Excellent. Excellent. How fun is that?
So
Okay.
it's possible to do it without the protractor if you just kind of eyeball it. Like this one's not perfect, but it would be fine for a quilt.
Absolutely. It's not perfect. And if you don't have the protractor, you can imagine the clock. You know, imagine the 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 clock, and you know, practice a few times with the paper, because it's a big help to have that. It's also very helpful when you shift to doing this in fabric. It's very helpful to have a 36-degree wedge like this. Am I pinned? Yes. A 36-degree wedge that you have not sliced up, because you'll need that for a pattern on your fabric. Now we're gonna shift over to how do we do this in fabric? In your kit, you'll have a couple of solid fabrics, a couple of print fabrics. I'm just going to use this light blue at random. Get the little threadies out of the way.
And I'll just make a comment while Lauren is doing that.
Hey.
Folks, you can just cut up, you can go to the thrift store or take some of your old shirting material and cut them into squares. And these are all 5-inch squares. Is that correct, Lauren?
These are 5-inch squares. Most of these, many of these fabrics are actually men's shirting fabrics. They're not quilting fabrics. They're actually men's shirting fabrics. You know, you just experiment with it. You could use a Tyvek envelope, for example. That's a really great alternative material. If they've got one that, you know, came with an Amazon book in it, you can turn it inside out and cut it up and use it to make stars. I mean, a lot of good options here. I'm using a piece of chambray for this, so I'm going to fold it in half. And I'm going to put my 36-degree angle right here. Great. I put my 36-degree angle right there. Hold that in place. Fold the lower part up. And fold that in half again. Hang on to it. Move your wedge over, and one more time fold it so that it's so that again you have 10 layers of fabric here. After a while, I did not, hang on, I'm going to run over and get my rotary cutter. That's the good thing about really being in the studio. You are in my quilting studio with me. So here's a rotary cutter. This is like a cross between an X-Acto knife and a pizza cutter. It is very sharp. It is very sharp. If you have a rotary cutter in your sewing toolkit, you also need a box of Band-Aids in your sewing toolkit. Don't get blood on your project. Always keep because
and I'm just going to say only from personal experience, don't imagine that children won't find these interesting.
Yes, right. So there are several different models of rotary cutter. This one has but they all have a guard on them. So this black is a plastic sleeve, that's little plastic plate that slides up. And when I'm ready to use it, I'm going to pull the guard down to expose that oh so sharp, fabulous blade. and I'm going to lay a ruler. Usually a rotary cutter is used with it's always used with a plastic ruler. I'm going to use my protractor because that's what I've got right here, but I'm very carefully not cutting my protractor. What's the matter here? There's not a pin in there, is there? Maybe I'll use the scissors.
Yeah, I think you have too many layers.
I think I have too many layers. Okay.
Yeah, usually 4 layers is about 4 or 5 layers is about it.
Was sitting down, I might could have gotten it with more layers, but with standing up. Anyway, setting that aside. Oh, and I didn't use my cloth scissors. That was a mistake. So here's my star, and here's my star-shaped hole. I'm going to put oh, isn't that pretty? So in your packet, you will have some bright colored things. You feel free to use some of those as to expose, cover some of those with the edges of the, with the hole. Here in my sample, I have a Stars and Stripe fabric, which is what I used for that. And then I can put this on something else. So let me show you how to attach those. You have sort of 2 choices if you're hand sewing. Those of you who are experienced quilters will perhaps want to fold an edge under and applique it, but we're not going there today. Sorry, I'm just not doing that today. So one option is to use, I'll show you the running stitch first. One option is to use a running stitch just to sew about 1/4 of an inch in from the edge. Just a little in and out stitch. I'm using a red top stitching thread because it's a little heavier. It's a really light, like a light pearl cotton.
And while you're stitching there, let me just make a note that the little thread kit that you got is a waxed cotton. So it's slightly stiffer than the thread you might have on a sewing machine. And it's easier for you to do a hand, to actually thread the needle. And that's how we selected to use that one. So it is a waxed quilting cotton. Lauren's holding up the spool there.
I'm holding up the spool. This is a thread that is specifically for the kind of the stitching that holds the top and this quilt sandwich, the top and the back and the batting together, and then the stitching through all of that with all the elaborate designs. And the fact that this has a glaze on it, a finish on it, does mean that it's easier to use, easier to thread your needles, easier to pull through. It's the glaze or the wax will keep it from knotting. So that's why that was selected for your kit. I am using, just so that you can see what I'm doing, I am using a top stitching thread. This is a Metler. This is a Sulky. Use whatever thread floats your boat, because this is a personal self-expression piece. So the running stitch goes in and back out, in and back out. If you're a little worried about fraying, you can put a little bit of fray check, that clear, a clear protective substance. Comes in a little bottle.
It's a lot like clear nail polish for those people that don't use fray check. It just helps to keep things from unraveling.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah.
And let me just also point out, some of you don't have sewing materials at home. So you just received the 3 pins and the needles from us, and you don't really know how to store them safely. I'm just going to point out that you can just use a bottle cork to stick your, I actually can't see myself. Let's see if I'm holding this in the right spot. Yeah,
Yep.
so you can just put a pin into a cork so that you have a place to keep them safely while you're working, because the last thing anybody wants to do is to step on a pin.
Right, right. I sometimes use just a little scrap of some other cloth, just any place that you always put the sharp thing when you're not actively using it. This is what fray check looks like. Comes in the notions department, and it just keeps the edges from raveling. So you might want to try that.
Lauren,
So-
can you tell us again what weight thread you're using?
I'm using a this is a 12 weight top stitching thread. I happen to have a lot of it. It's beautiful colors. I use it a lot because I like it and because it shows up really well for hand decorating. Looks like that. So you can do a running stitch, and in my sample, the running stitch here was done in white. Let me see that up close. Okay, the running stitch was done in white, so it's a nice design element. I will leave you to do that. Another option is to cover the edge with a blanket stitch, which is a simple embroidery stitch, one of the most basic embroidery stitches. If you're not familiar with it, learning to do it for this project will give you a wonderful tool that you can, I see Sandra says you can also use embroidery floss. Absolutely. Finish these edges however you want. That's great. But a blanket stitch is a really nice way to cover an edge. This stitch is called a blanket stitch because it was used to finish the edges of blankets. How about that? So to do a blanket stitch, you start, your thread goes up right at the edge of the star, wherever you want it to move for your, wherever you want to start sewing. I'm adding a new thread. I'm going to leave a tail here on the back and go back and weave that in when I'm done. So you come up along the edge, scoot, move along in the blue. So my stitches are going to be about 3/16 maybe apart. Just be consistent. And it goes like that. The needle goes in to the blue, comes out through the at the edge of the white. The red thread goes underneath the needle as you pull it through. So there's a little loop. I'll just keep doing that a few times to let you see it and practice. When I come to the point of the star, I'm going to put the needle in right into the end of the previous stitch so that I get a little straight line down. Isn't that pretty? And then over. I have pinned this star onto the background so it will stay in place. You know, the pin goes through and back out, and the point is now pointing toward where I'm working, so I don't want to do that. I'm going to take the pin out and change the orientation of the pin so I don't poke myself, and then keep going with my stitching. Are there questions at this point?
Yeah, someone just posted in the chat, they got a 6-point star. Do you want to explain what might have happened?
Yes. I will tell a story on myself. Angela called me up the other day and we were doing a run through to make sure the lighting was fine and so forth. And I was doing the demo and I got a 6-point star like 5 times.
So you are not alone if you got a 6.
You are not alone if you got a 6-pointed star. In fact, I've thrown them all away. But if you, let's see, here's a piece of paper. If you want a 6-pointed star, where's a scrap of paper? If you want a 6-pointed star, you can fold it in half and fold it in thirds and in thirds and then in half. I'm very experienced at the 6-pointed star. Six-pointed stars are very nice. Very nice. Okay, so there's the 6-pointed star. What's different about the 5-pointed star is that I folded it in half. This little 36-degree part doesn't have things folded on top of it. Now it's not included in the layering here, whereas with the 6-pointed star you have this part that goes over and this part that goes over, so there are a bunch of layers the whole time. In this case, this section stays as only 2. We have, the whole thing is 2 layers. If we fold it, then we have 4 layers. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 layers now here, and these 2. And then we fold that in half, and we have 8 layers in this thicker part, and we still have 2. And so then when we fold that back, then we have added that last 2 to
Right,
this
Laura,
pile.
Lauren, I want to ask again, that very last fold you do away from the others?
You could do it toward them. It doesn't really matter. I find it easier just because of the bulk. I find it easier to have nice.
The last one goes back. That's when I have been successful. I folded it back, and then
Yeah.
I'm one of the other sillies. I not only got 6 stars, I got like a truncated.
Well, and that has to do with the angle of your cut.
Yeah.
So
And counting the layers, as you said.
and
So if-
counting the layers will help. Any of us who has ever taught anybody to do anything understands that the struggle is part of the learning. The getting it wrong is where the actual work happens. If you did it right the first time, you would not have learned anything. So the acquisition of knowledge involves struggle. So here we are. I saw something drift through the chat about what do we do with written on fabric? We're going to move on. Thank you for keeping me on task. I appreciate that.
And can you do one more time? Where is the cut when you make the cut? Where does that happen?
The cut is from one of the folded sides to the other folded side. So part of the wedge. Get something on the wedge from this side to this side, and it could be from fairly close to the bottom to fairly close to the top here. If it's a steep angle, you'll get a very pointy star. If it's a gradual angle, you'll get kind of a fat star. So just, just make some samples. And it's not wrong. You've made prototypes. That's how development works, right? You make a prototype. Okay, that's not quite what I'm going for. Let's do something else. So, all right. So we've got pieces that have stars on them. So here's a star that's already sewn on. I did this one at the sewing machine because this has a zigzag on it.
Mhm.
That's another option. We don't have sewing machines with us right at the moment, but we.
Lauren, question for you.
Yes.
For people who are interested, is it possible to use a glue stick to do any sort of securing with this project, or would you discourage us from that?
A glue stick would be a great way to do it in paper. I'm not a fan of glue stick and cloth because it doesn't stick and it's a mess. It's a hot mess. So it's that using a needle and thread is so basic. This is something that humans learned how to do millennia ago. So using a needle and thread is clean, it's tidy. I'm not a huge fan of glue stick. If you want to do the project in paper, that's the appropriate attachment method. Don't glue your quilts.
If I use Wonder Under
Uh-huh.
the star to secure my star before,
Yes.
then I wouldn't have to worry about it slipping and sliding, and it would be washable.
If you use Wonder Under, it does attach the star if you use Wonder Under and you really want to do this with Wonder Under, then you should put Wonder Under underneath on one side of your fabric before you cut your star. You should cut it out, the Wonder Under should be on there first because it is going to be a pain in the neck to get a nice crisp cut and have the fusible material in the right place if you're trying to do it after you've cut out the stars. So if you want to use Wonder Under, put it on the back, cut your star, and then you'll be able to take the paper off the star and off the star-shaped hole. And Wonder Under is a good product if you're doing this sewing by sewing machine. I find it hard to needle.
Very hard, yeah.
Yeah, so absolutely, take the techniques, make them your own, make what you want to make. That's fine. And Wonder Under is a good option for the stars if you're doing the sewing on the sewing machine. If you're having to do it by hand, it's hard to sew through. Other questions? This is great. I'm thrilled to have questions.
Same thing with the glue, because there are some fabric glues out there that are designed for fabric, but even then, sometimes you might have a little bit of trouble with the hand sewing, the fabric glue.
You can tell I have a prejudice against glue, so I don't have very much experience with glue. If you can make it work, that's fine.
Yeah, I would say do a test first. Do a test run first to see if it works.
Yes, absolutely. Angela is completely right. Always do a test. If in doubt, try it out. Okay, so what are we going to do with these pieces? How are we going to get them into our quilt block with our writing? So in order to put this into your quilt, you're going to pull the freezer paper off, set that aside, and here's my block. Let's see, what am I going to use? Where's the one I was sewing on? Okay. So I'm going to use the There's not a right or wrong way to do this. You can use whatever fabrics you've got. I think we do that. In my sample, I have one block with a text on it and 2 stars and a plain block. You know, that's fine. If you wanted to use, use a star that had a strip on it, and maybe add another strip. I included several different sizes and types of strips on here if you wanted to do that. That's fine. Put them together however you want. But just in general, try to have try to make a square block. And the reason for that is I'm going to ask you if you'd be willing to contribute a picture of your block to a digital group quilt. And so if you wanted to put, strips around the edge of it, that's fine.
So
let me just show you.
I just want to tell people, so it would be voluntary, right, to have your square to be in the quilt. So you would send them to us. I've put the email address. It's the name Humanities Days as a single word at montgomerycollege.edu. And Jennifer Baugh, who is our creative projects person, she's amazing. She will take the digital squares and put them all together so it looks like we have a big quilt, which of course we won't have a real one, but we'll have a beautiful digital quilt.
Beautiful digital quilt.
Okay.
That'll be.
And so we need names.
So we're sending them there and not to Lauren's email address.
not-
Lauren, we had talked
Right.
about.
Oh, Lauren, if you want to do it, we will say yes.
Well,
Yeah,
I don't know how to do it. So if you send them to me, I'm going to have to learn how to do it. So if you've got somebody who's got some skills, that's fine.
Well, I'll put it this way. If you want to learn, we will have, audience, we will sort this out in the next moment or
We'll
two.
sort this out. We'll sort this out. But,
Okay.
yeah, if you've got people who will teach me, the great thing about this pandemic is that we have had to learn how to do stuff. And, a year ago, I would have said, oh, well, I don't know how to do that. I can't do that. And now I have to figure it out because otherwise I'm going to be sitting at home staring at the walls. So, so we'll talk. Jennifer, I would love to work on this with you and learn how to do this. That'd be great. Let me show you how to sew your pieces together.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And just so you know the time, it's 11:03. So we have about 10 minutes.
10 minutes.
10
Okay.
minutes. Okay.
The are 5 inches more or less. They're not exactly 5 inches. The quilting purists are going to throw up their hands in despair at me for doing this, but for a number of years I was teaching a class about quilt making inspired by the quilts of Gee's Bend. And that's a style of quilting that doesn't worry too much about precision. It's more about the intuitive approach to this.
Yeah.
So it has changed my view of quilt making forever. And so I'm not quite as wrapped around the axle about things being exact as I was before. And that's fine. If you want a nice square intersection here in the middle, however, it is very helpful to have a uniform seam allowance. So when I did this, I drew, you can see it really well on the white one. I drew a of each block, and then I lined up those lines. You can use a template to make all those squares exactly the same, or you can just do the best you can and know that the fabric has some ease to it. So if you need to pin the ends and make the middle just meet, you could do that. So there's. Make these marks in pencil. Don't use ink for these. I sometimes use colored pencils so I can see them a little better, but and just relax into the knowledge that there are lots of right ways to do this. But when you're sewing quilt pieces together, you want to put pretty sides together. So if these two are going to be side by side in my block, I'm going to set them out, lay them out side by side, and then fold these two so that they're right sides together and the edges are even. I like to have the lighter colored fabric toward me so I can see the line better. I'm going to pin the end and pin the end. And don't see any of my threaded needles, so I'll just try another one. Thread the needle. By the way, you have a needle in your packet. If you don't, if you find that needle is hard to use for some reason, and you kind of like the idea of hand sewing, get yourself a set of assorted sizes of needles. Needles come in different lengths and different size holes and different thicknesses of shafts. And there are lots of needles because there are lots of different sizes of hands that use needles for different things. So just get an assortment, and if one doesn't suit you, just keep trying until you find one that does. I'm going to leave a little tail here at the beginning. I'm going to put the needle in at the corner, use a little tail, and do a back stitch so that will serve to keep instead of a knot. I'm going to pleat this back and forth, sewing right on the line. Stitching, 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 stitching. This is actually a very contemplative kind of activity. You get into a rhythm, your body's about rhythm, you have a heartbeat, you're breathing. The world is about rhythm, and when you sit peacefully and do some hand sewing, it's a way to slow yourself down, to get into that right brain part of yourself that's it's a place of peacefulness and a place of intuition, a place of stress management. So, it's a good thing to do. It's a good thing to do. I'm going to shorten the last stitch so that I come up right in the corner. And I'm going to make a back stitch. And then I'm going to trim that, clip that off. And there are my two pieces beautifully sewn together. So what if I want to add this up here, which I could do, and just make it be part of my bigger quilts or part of whatever else you're doing. Put that right sides together. I'm going to pin at the middle. Pin the end. You're going to sew this line segment just as though there was nothing else attached to it, just like you sewed this one. So from here to here and do a back stitch, and then push your needle through and sew from here to here and do a back stitch. When you do hand piecing and you're sewing things together, you don't sew the seam allowances down. The seam allowances should stay loose. And then it could be like that. Okay, I think we're probably close to our time. I'm happy to take some more questions if there are questions about things.
There was one note about the piece you showed where it looked like you took a square and cut it in half just to give variation. So it was so small. Can you just explain what they need to do to that, since they'll lose a little bit of the seam allowance, so they need to.
In your kit, there are actually strips of, some of you may have some strips of things in your kit. So you could just,
everybody should have one of these longer strips.
Okay.
Longer strips and pieces, and it's just to allow you to have some variety. In this case, this is a strip from when I was actually working on that piece that I showed you at the beginning, and one of the ideas that I liked about why I vote was the both and, not the either or, but the both and idea, to, about not being oppositional and being cooperative while still participating in a group decision-making process. So I have little stripes here, and you could use some of your extra writing fabric, extra white fabric, and do a striped unit like that came out to be 5 inches if you wanted to do that. This is, oh, look at that. There's a 6-pointed star. How about that? How about that? Thank you so much, everybody, for being with me today. And I'm thrilled that we could have some fun together and kick off Humanities Week like this. I would like to invite you to an exhibit from an exhibit that will be at the Sandy Spring Museum. Would you do my face, please? Thank you.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you. I'd like to invite you to an exhibit about story quilts that will be at the Sandy Spring Museum in January through mid-March. I had a grant from the Maryland State Arts Council last year to work with private student Kathy Fink, whom many of you may know as an awesome musician, folk musician, banjo player, and guitarist. And so she wanted to make story quilts, so we worked together and did that. Her story quilts, my quilts that are about telling a story, will be on exhibit there. And the Uhuru Quilters Guild of Prince George's County, of which Angela is a member, has graciously agreed to share some of their story quilts with us. So there will be 20 of their quilts, and maybe hopefully probably 15 or 18 of our quilts, and that we will have a virtual exhibit of that as well. And Sandy Spring is open by appointment right now, so hopefully we will. Who knows? But anyway, there will be an exhibit, and thank you so much, everybody.
We have a couple more questions in the chat. One, Greg Wall, he has asked a question about quilts for political expression as a longstanding tradition. And yes, and actually I'm going to be presenting a workshop on Wednesday morning at 10 called Fists of Fabric that talks specifically about quilts used for social justice. So I don't know if you wanted to make a comment from your perspective about that topic in general. But there is another exhibit on that.
There's another presentation on that, and that's
presentation,
on Wednesday morning. Before women had the vote, there was a long tradition of making quilts for political statements. They couldn't vote, but they had opinions, and so there is a whole body of quilts from the 19th century supporting candidates, supporting ideas, supporting causes. Angela's got a lot to say about quilts as tools for social justice. Quilts are a wonderful medium for connected expression with people. So
That is really interesting. Thank you.
yeah, thank you for your question. Thank you.
I think my grandmother, who was a quilter, would be surprised at that.
Well, how about that?
Indeed.
Maybe
I
not.
think
Maybe
I-
not. Maybe I
I
underestimate her. We'll see.
I suspect that we underestimated our grandmothers because we are not different from our grandmothers. We are different education, different financial opportunities, different social opportunities. But I don't think people have changed all that much.
Not that much. All right. So,
Sorry,
so-
one more question. Someone asked, so you don't trim the remaining thread? Do you mean the tail of the thread? Is that Rose? Meaning the remainder of the thread that's hanging like
Whenever you're clipping the ends of the thread, leave yourself like a quarter of an inch so that it doesn't just pull out. You don't necessarily want to have long things hanging all over the place.
I'm just going to pop in for a moment and tell everybody we have 28 events this week at Montgomery College. They're all open. They're free. You do have to register at our montgomerycollege.edu/humanities-days. And you have to register for each event separately. There is a whole lot of work on the back side of that. So your email confirmation may come. If you signed up for something today, you may get something maybe just a half an hour before the event. But if you're in the system, we should be able to circle back at you. But if you take 30 events, which is the total number, and multiply it by all the people, my associate is really going crazy. So we're working it. And we just are so happy that you were here with us today. And I'm so excited to read through the chat box we have people from Florida and Maryland and Virginia and DC and other states and places as well. Thank you so much for coming. And Lauren, I'm going to unmute everybody if I can.
Okay.
So that people can clap for you.
Oh, bless your heart. Thank you.
So we're going to clap now. You're unmuted. There you go. Thank you all. I'm muting you again. You're safe.
Okay, and is there one more?
I think I need to practice more how to cut my turn into this.
Oh, nice.
How beautiful.
Is 8 points.
I got too many stars.
But it looks nice.
Look at you. I don't have my stars on yet because I'm afraid my stars didn't work. But look at that. Chandani's got one.
Okay, one more point before everyone leaves. What is the final decision about where you want people to send their images?
Lauren?
For the digital quilt? Are they sending it?
Send them to the college. Send them to the college.
Okay. So if
I'll get together with you about that.
We will share everything that we get with you. That's our promise.
That'll be great. Hey, Johnny, that's beautiful. Look at you. Look at you. Hold it up again.
That's my sister. Hold on. That's my sister. Okay.
Oh, nice. Thank you. Wow. That's
Very nice.
wonderful. Hey, nice, Roz. I like it.
How cool is that? All right.
Okay, so I teach for Smithsonian. I do quilting classes for Smithsonian. So if you want to take some more classes, you can check out Smithsonian Associates and Studio Arts program. And I think my next class is called Mindful Stitching. So that'll be fun. And then after the first of the year, I've got a bunch of how-to quilt kind of things coming. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. It was very interesting.